They look like Europeans. Fair skin catching the cold northern light, blue and gray eyes reflecting the frozen lakes of the north, but hidden in their blood lies a whisper from thousands of miles away. A whisper that doesn't belong to Europe at all, but to Siberia. For decades, scientists believed Europe's ancestry was a simple tapestry. Mesolithic hunter, gatherers, Neolithic farmers from Anatolia, and Bronze Age steppe herders. Most modern Europeans are some mixture of these three great migrations. But when researchers mapped the DNA of the Finnish people, they found something shocking. Finland didn't follow the rules. Modern Finns stand genetically apart, a clear outlier on Europe's genetic map. Tambets et al. 2018. Lamnidis et al. 2018. While their neighbors in Sweden, Russia, and the Baltics carry predictable European ancestry, Finns carry 5 to 13% East Eurasian DNA, a signal shared with Siberian peoples like the Nganasan. This genetic marker is almost invisible in the rest of Western Europe. It's like a ghost thread, a genetic fingerprint from the frozen East, woven into a Western population. The evidence comes not just from modern genomes, but from ancient burials. In sites like Bolshoi Oleni Ostrov in Russia and Levenluta in western Finland, scientists have recovered human remains that reveal the same Siberian signature, proof that migrations from the Uralic East swept into Fennoscandia more than 3,500 years ago. These migrants brought not just their genes, but the seeds of Uralic languages, forever altering the region's identity. Nature Communications, 2018. This discovery does more than rewrite maps. It touches identity itself. Every strand of Finnish DNA is a survival story forged in isolation, in ice, in the echoes of migrations Europe forgot. It speaks of small populations enduring in the north, where borders meant nothing, but nature ruled everything. And in this remote land, the past never truly left. It's carved into their genes. So here's the paradox. If the Finns are European, why do their chromosomes whisper Siberia? Somewhere in this frozen landscape, an ancient encounter left a mark. No empire, no war, and no century could erase. Next, the land that trapped this gene pool in time, and how Finland became a frozen cradle for a unique people. To understand how that mark endured, we must return to the very beginning, to a land just awakening from ice. Around 9000 BC, as the last ice age loosened its grip, glaciers pulled back to reveal a wilderness unlike any other in Europe. Vast boreal forests, endless swamps, and over 190,000 lakes carved by melting ice created a landscape of isolation. Here, the first hunter-gatherer families arrived, likely from the Baltic and southern Scandinavia, carrying stone tools, fire, and fragile hope. But survival here was not like anywhere else. Finland was a natural fortress. Each lake was a barrier, each forest a wall, and each winter a test of endurance. While Europe buzzed with migrations, Celts drifting west, early Slavs forming in the east, and Indo-European steppe warriors sweeping across the continent, this northern frontier remained still. Archaeological sites like Uralic and Ristola, with their bone fishhooks, pottery fragments, and stone axes, tell the story of tiny family groups, isolated for centuries, intermarrying and living by fishing, hunting, and foraging. This geographic and cultural isolation did something remarkable. It froze their genes in time. Modern genetic studies, Lamnidis et al. 2018, Tambets et al. 2018, show that rare genetic variants from these early pioneers survived for thousands of years, barely diluted by contact with outsiders. Finland became a genetic time capsule, a living echo of the first people who dared settle this frozen land. Yet this was only half the story, because one day, footsteps came from the east. Travelers from the Siberian forest steppes, carrying new bloodlines and the seeds of the Uralic languages, began to cross into Finland. And when those worlds collided, Finland's DNA would never be the same. It began roughly 3,500 years ago, in the Bronze Age, when the quiet forests of Finland felt the echo of new arrivals. They came from the vast Siberian taiga, a people hardened by endless winters and frozen rivers. These were the ancestors whose DNA would transform the Finnish genome. Genetic studies. Nature Communications, 2018, reveal that they carried 5 to 13% East Eurasian ancestry, a signature almost invisible in the rest of Europe, but forever imprinted here. Picture the scene. Nomadic travelers, clad in fur and reindeer hides, crossed the icy rivers and tundra with their families and herds. They carried Sema Turbino bronze weapons, beautiful, intricate tools that spread across Eurasia like a whisper of innovation around 1500 BC. With them came something far more enduring than metal, genes from the heart of Siberia, weaving a new thread into Finland's future. This migration was not a slow trickle. It was a genetic fingerprint stamped into Finland for eternity. Archaeogenomic research shows that this wave of people brought not only Siberian bloodlines, but also the roots of Uralic languages, linking modern Finns and the Sami to a vast network of peoples stretching from the Volga to the Yenisei. Ancient remains from Bolshoi Oleni Ostrov in Russia, dated to approximately 1500 BC, carry this exact ancestry, perfectly matching the genes later found in Iron Age burials in Finland. Lamnidis et al. 2018. Every step of these migrants reshaped identity in the north. Their arrival marked a collision of worlds. The isolated descendants of Europe's first settlers meeting the relentless tide of Siberia. This moment explains why Finnish DNA still carries Eastern echoes, even while surrounded by purely Western neighbors. But then, the earth itself began to speak. Archaeologists opened a single grave, buried in the cold waters of western Finland, and inside, they found a secret no one expected. What they uncovered would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the first Finns. That secret waited in the misty waters of Levenlufta, an Iron Age lake burial site dated to 300–800 CE. Imagine a lake draped in dawn fog, its surface like a sheet of glass, while beneath the water rests a cemetery of bones. These people were not buried in earth. They were surrendered to the lake, a ritual so unusual that even archaeologists were stunned when they first uncovered the remains in the 17th century. When modern scientists sequenced the ancient genomes preserved in those waterlogged bones, the results were explosive. They did not match the genetic profile of modern Finns at all. Instead, they aligned far more closely with the Sami, the indigenous people of northern Scandinavia. Lamnidis et al. 2018. Nature Communications, 2018. This was the kind of discovery that rewrites history overnight. It was not simply a whisper of difference, it was a genetic scream. These findings prove that southern Finland, over 1,000 years ago, was home to a population almost erased from the map. Archaeological analysis supported the genetics. Fragments of iron knives, bronze jewelry, and woolen garments pointed to a hybrid culture influenced by both Baltic and Arctic traditions. Radiocarbon dating locked their story in time, aligning with the era when Uralic-speaking migrants carrying Siberian ancestry surged westward. The weakest line before, the genomes of Levenlufta told a silent story of migration and replacement, now hits harder as Levenlufta's DNA didn't whisper, it shouted. It exposed a brutal truth. The people of this land were replaced. This was not a subtle shift in population. It was a massive turnover. The original inhabitants, genetically Sami, were either absorbed, displaced, or vanished entirely as new populations arrived. Every fragment of bone and every strand of DNA from Levenlufta leaves us with the same haunting question. If the first Finns we've unearthed were not the ancestors of today's Finns, then who exactly are the modern Finns? The answer begins 4,000 years ago, with the arrival of the first Finnic-speaking settlers, small family groups traveling from the Volga-Ural region, drawn into the wilderness of what we now call Finland. They were not an army. They were just a few dozen families, carving life from ice and forest. Genetic research, Preussner et al. 2024, shows that their tiny population would become the foundation of an entire nation's gene pool. Here, survival meant isolation. In the Bronze Age, around 2100 BC, these settlers endured unforgiving winters, short summers, and scarce resources. Famine, disease, and climate shifts repeatedly struck small villages. And with each disaster came a population bottleneck, a narrowing of the genetic funnel where only a fraction of people survived to pass on their DNA. Centuries later, in the 17th century, Finland was hit by devastating plagues and famines again, reducing populations to fragments. These repeated trials amplified rare alleles, shaping a gene pool that is unlike any other in Europe. Picture a family tree collapsing into a thin funnel, a single narrow passage of survival. For thousands of years, every generation emerged from that funnel, carrying the same ancestral imprint. Modern Finns are the living echo of a handful of survivors, their genomes a testament to endurance against overwhelming odds. The scientific term for this phenomenon is founder effect, and in Finland it is profound. It explains why rare genetic variants became common, why 36 hereditary disorders now cluster here, and why Finnish DNA is a goldmine for genetic research. The story of the Finns is not one of endless diversity, it is the story of survival under pressure, of a nation literally built by the genes of a few. But this survival came with a hidden cost, locked deep in their chromosomes. From this fragile lineage emerged a genetic burden so unique that scientists gave it a name: the Finnish disease heritage. This is the price of survival. In the cold crucible of Finland, where small populations endured for centuries in isolation, survival left scars written in DNA. Today, scientists have identified 36 rare genetic disorders that cluster almost exclusively in the Finnish population conditions that appear almost nowhere else on Earth. Peltonen et al., 1999. Among them are congenital nephrosis, a fatal kidney disorder seen in newborns, and aspartyl glucosaminuria, a degenerative condition that slowly robs children of their abilities. Imagine a remote village in northern Karelia during the 1802nd. Families live only miles apart, yet they intermarry across generations because the land and lakes keep them apart from the wider world. In these villages, the same rare mutation quietly travels through bloodlines, unseen but relentless. Generations later, doctors would begin to notice patterns. A child born with the same illness as a cousin 2 valleys over, a funeral repeated in a family with haunting familiarity. Modern genetics has turned this tragedy into revelation. Because Finland's population went through multiple genetic bottlenecks, these rare mutations became more common than in any other country. Researchers call this the Finnish disease heritage, FDH. What could have been a silent curse became an extraordinary scientific opportunity. In the 1992nd, Finnish researchers began systematically mapping these disorders, and by 1999, the world had a detailed genetic atlas of Finland's rare diseases. Peltonen et al., 1999. Today, with projects like FinGen, 2023, scientists can link these inherited conditions to global medical breakthroughs, unraveling the genetic basis for diabetes, cholesterol regulation, and neurological diseases. In Finland, the very scars of survival became keys to unlocking medical mysteries worldwide. Yet, as scientists traced these mutations across the map, they stumbled on another secret. Patterns emerged that no one expected. Genetic disorders, and the rare alleles that cause them, were not spread evenly across the country. Instead, they formed clusters almost like invisible borders running through Finland itself. And that invisible border would uncover a deeper genetic divide, hidden in the snow for centuries. Those invisible borders are not myths. They are etched in Finnish DNA, as if history itself left a scar beneath the skin. Modern genetic studies reveal a startling east-west split that still shapes the population today. Eastern Finns, whose ancestors endured the harsh forests of Karelia and the influence of Novgorod, carry the N1CY chromosome at rates reaching 71%, a marker tracing straight back to Siberian and Uralic migrations that began over 3,500 years ago. By contrast, Western Finns, along the Baltic coast and Gulf of Bothnia, carry far more of the I1 haplogroup, the genetic fingerprint of Scandinavian ancestry and centuries of Swedish rule. Nature, 2019. The weakest line before, "This is not just an academic curiosity," now strikes harder as, "This is not a footnote in history, it is a living map carved into human blood." DNA today can pinpoint a person's ancestral village with remarkable accuracy. Researchers from the University of Helsinki have shown that, with a single genome, they can often tell whether someone's family lived east or west of this invisible genetic snowline, a boundary so precise that it mirrors medieval history. In 1323, the Treaty of Göteborg formally split Finland. Sweden claimed the west, Novgorod the east. Borders shifted, wars were fought, and languages collided, but genes stayed loyal to geography. For centuries, marriages happened mostly within regions, reinforcing the divide. This is why, even today, certain hereditary disorders cluster along this ancient split, and why the blood of Finns can still draw the map of a kingdom long gone. But the genetic story doesn't stop with kings or treaties, because as scientists dug deeper into this DNA past medieval borders, past the Bronze Age, they uncovered an even older signature, a code written in the Ice Age, from ancestors who walked this frozen land before Finland existed. And unlocking that code would reveal the oldest chapter in the story of the Finnish people. That code has now come alive in the modern age. In sleek, glass-walled labs, under the hum of sequencers, scientists are reading the whispers of ancient Finns, strand by strand. Projects like FinGen and the Finnish Biobank Network have turned Finland into a living laboratory of human genetics. And here is the shock. With just 20,000 Finnish DNA samples, researchers are uncovering genetic variants that would take millions of samples to find in other countries. FinGen, 2023. This power comes from Finland's isolation and founder effects. Every rare mutation that survived those population bottlenecks is now magnified, like ink on snow. For scientists, it is a gift. For families, sometimes a burden. Yet together, these genomes are unlocking secrets of diabetes, cholesterol regulation, and even neurological disorders, offering clues for global medicine. Picture the journey of discovery. Ancient bones from Levenluta and Bolshoi Oleni Ostrov, wrapped in centuries of silence, travel to modern labs in Helsinki. Their DNA is sequenced, transformed into dazzling digital constellations points of light mapping, migrations, marriages, and the hidden architecture of disease. Through this lens, the Finnish genome becomes a Rosetta Stone of human history, translating the language of survival and ancestry for the entire world. The weakest line before viewer takeaway. This is why Finns are the Rosetta Stone of human genetics, now strikes harder as every Finnish genome is a key unlocking not just the country's past, but the genetic secrets of humanity itself. But this research revealed more than science. The closer we look at these genomes, the more we see a portrait of identity of a people carrying the echoes of Europe and Siberia, of survival and sacrifice. Because DNA is not just data, it is identity. And that identity is complicated. Complicated because Finland exists on the fault line of two worlds. Walk through Helsinki's harbor, past the glass towers and snow-lined streets, and it feels undeniably European. But listen, the language is Finnish, and it does not belong to the Indo-European family that dominates Europe. It belongs to the Uralic branch, a linguistic lineage stretching east across the Urals towards Siberia. It is the voice of a people whose roots run beyond Europe, echoing in every word spoken today. This duality runs deeper than culture. Modern Finns carry the imprint of two continents in their blood. The Siberian ancestry embedded in their chromosomes whispers of migrations over 3,500 years ago, while Nordic traditions and Scandinavian influences shaped their visible identity. It is a paradox, a nation rooted in the West, yet genetically tied to the East. Picture it, northern lights rippling across Lapland, the low thrum of Sami shaman drums in ancient forests, and in the south, Helsinki glowing under winter lamps. A country straddling past and present, east and west, a living bridge suspended in snow and time. The weakest line before "to be Finnish" is "to belong everywhere and nowhere" now strikes harder as to be Finnish is to carry the rhythm of two worlds standing in Europe, yet beating with the heart of Siberia. This identity is more than symbolic. Sami rituals and Arctic traditions still echo in the far north, while Swedish influence lingers in western towns, in the architecture, and even in place names. And yet, beneath the surface of culture and history lies a genetic truth older than kingdoms or borders. The DNA of the Finnish people carries a legacy of survival, a fusion of forgotten migrations and frozen endurance. Every genome is a living memory, a code that speaks of hardship, isolation, and belonging everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But the next revelation does not lie in language or in living memory. It waits, buried deep in the earth, locked in ice, in peat bogs, and at the bottom of ancient lakes. And the next secret of Finnish DNA is waiting, silent, in the frozen ground. Under the flicker of the northern lights, a team of scientists kneels on the frozen tundra. Their headlamps cut through the polar dark. Augers grind into the permafrost, pulling up columns of ice and ancient soil time capsules that have slept for thousands of years. Each core is a story, a frozen record of life and death, waiting to be read. In the Kola Peninsula and Arctic Finland, archaeologists are opening windows into a world that predates the Sami, the Finns, and even the first Uralic whispers. Frozen bones, teeth, and sediments may hold the DNA of lineages older than history itself, remnants of the first humans who walked this icy frontier after the glaciers retreated. With new paleogenomic techniques, scientists can recover DNA not just from bones, but from the soil itself, tracing lost populations invisible to the naked eye. Imagine it. A single hair trapped in ice for 7,000 years. A tooth buried in peat since the Mesolithic. From these fragments, researchers could reconstruct forgotten ancestries, reveal unknown migrations, and even rewrite the timeline of human survival in the North. Every discovery promises a collision between myth and data, where the land finally speaks for itself. The weakest sentence before future excavations could reveal lost lineages older than the Sami now hits harder as, beneath the Arctic soil may lie the genomes of people so old, so forgotten, that they predate every story ever told of this land. Finland is not a frozen relic. It is a living archive of human history, a bridge between worlds, where each new discovery forces us to confront who we are and who we came from. The last chapter of Finnish DNA is not in history books. It's still frozen in the snow, waiting for us to listen.